Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my top 10 albums of 2020 list. Before we get into the list proper, I want to do two quick things. First is just a list of 10 songs I loved from albums that won't get any mention in this video. After that, I'm going to shout out a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the top 10. So let's do the first thing. 10 songs I want to put a spotlight on that don't appear on any of my top 10 albums or my honorable mention albums. In no particular order. Machine Guns and Peacock Feathers by Ulver. Blinding Lights by The Weeknd. Love is a Rose by Neil Young, Dhudha by Ssaru, KOWP or King of World Peace by Aesop-ROC, Letting You Go by Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, It's Already Too Late by Gord Sinclair, iPhone by Rico Nasty, Midnight Sky by Miley Cyrus, You'll Be Mine by the Psychedelic Furs. Just 10 fantastic songs I think you should all check out. Moving on to honorable mentions. So these are albums that I loved, but didn't quite make the top 10. First is R.A. the Rugged Man's All My Heroes Are Dead. This thing is chock full of fantastic tracks. A lot of great material here. The one downside is it's too long. It's just way too long. I think it's 21 tracks in total with only 2 skits. So like 19 full songs. It's a bit of a slog, but a lot of the songs are great. Next up, SA-ROC, the Sharecropper's Daughter. Again, this is a really good rap album, and I hadn't actually heard of SA-ROC before this year, and I don't know why that is, because she's exactly what I would be looking for. And I love this record. I love her lyrical abilities and her personality. The one thing about this album I don't like is, I guess the choruses aren't very strong. I think the chorus on Gold Leaf is quite good, but the rest of them are kind of meh. Up next, Thy CATAFALQUE, NAIV. 2 years ago, Thy CATAFALQUE was my choice for album of the year with their album Geometria, and I was super excited for this one. And NAIV came out early in the year, I think in January of 2020. But yeah, very much a front runner for album of the year that early on. But as the year went along, it just got buried under better albums. That's all. Still a good record though. KAW, Descendants of CAIN. This is an album that I think I respect more than I enjoy. I like it a lot, and I think what he's done here is tremendous. But I don't find myself coming back to it very often. It doesn't have a lot of replay value for me, but I think it is a great project. Gord Downie, Away Is Mine. Gord Downie, lead singer of the Tragically Hip, passed away a couple years ago, and this is the last of his posthumous material. I want to shout it out because Gord Downie is probably my favorite lyricist in rock music. Love the way he sings, love the way he writes. A lot of the posthumous material that's come out already has been fantastic. This album is good, but it's not his best stuff. I hate saying it, but it is what it is. I think it's a good record. I don't think it's one of his best, but I do want to shout it out because he is one of my favorites. And the last of the honorable mentions I'm giving to The Residents, Metal, Meat and Bone. This thing is crazy, as is per usual for The Residents. I'm going to try to condense it real quick here. So basically, the concept behind the record is that the Residents have come into possession of some old blues songs from either the 70s or the 80s by a man called Dyin' Dog. And they've got his original demo tapes, and that makes up one of the discs here, of just these old Dyin' Dog demos, old angry blues songs. So then the other disc is made up of the Residents just straight up covering those songs, and then adding a few more songs that are inspired by Dyin' Dog. Now, I shouldn't have to tell you, if you're familiar with Residents, there is no Dyin' Dog. That's just something they made up for fun, I guess. I love the concept. I think it's really good. The execution leaves a little to be desired, but the Residents have still been on a roll, especially recently, I think, with The Ghost of Hope and Intruders being two fantastic records. I think this one's just a little bit of a step back, but that's fine. I mean, it's still great. Okay, so now we're getting into the top 10 list proper. Number 10, Myrkur, Folkesange. Kicking off our list is the new Scandinavian folk record by Myrkur. I like Myrkur's heavier music as well, but it's her folk-influenced material that has always impressed me more. I simply just love her voice. It falls very neatly upon my ears, and I could listen to it a lot. When she announced this new album and released the lead single, Ella, I was very excited because it seemed like it was going to be the exact kind of album I'd wanted from Myrkur, and it was. Beautiful, haunting melodies and wonderful instrumentals. I really enjoy the atmosphere of this record. It brings to mind an ancient, mist-filled forest populated by somber ghosts and yearning spirits. Number 9, Colter, Western Swing and Waltzes and Other Punchy Songs. Canadian country singer Colter comes in at number 9 with his new record. What I love about Wall is his traditional style of country music, and I mean traditional, not just a throwback to the 60s or 70s outlaw stuff. No, this is a throwback to the 30s and 40s era material. It's been refreshing these past few years to see a section of country music reverting back to a style that more closely resembles country music's beginnings, and Colter is at the forefront of that movement. This album has some great originals and some fantastic covers. Colter is a great storyteller, and he isn't as reliant upon his deep voice as he had been in the past. He's got a unique voice that lends him some credibility that normally wouldn't accompany a man so young. This is exactly the kind of country music I'm looking for, the kind my father used to play on cassette while we would be driving down some dirt roads. Number 8, Nihiloxica, Kaloli, I think is how that's pronounced. Nihiloxica are a band I had never heard of before this year, and the only reason I checked this record out is due to the album cover. But I am so happy I did because it has changed my perspective on certain aspects of music. I have a pretty rudimentary understanding of music theory, but some things I've always been drawn to were polyrhythms and odd time signatures. In high school, when my musical interest really started burgeoning, I sought out all kinds of music that would satiate my interest in these things. I did start listening to music from around the world, including, and I know this is far too blanket a term, apologies, but including African music. On the surface, it seemed like something I would enjoy, percussion-driven, polyrhythmic, odd time signatures, and yet I couldn't get into it. And from then until this year, I didn't understand why, but since I listened to this record, I finally do get why that kind of music didn't resonate with me. So, Kaloli is a record built upon African percussion, rhythms, and instrumentation, but it is combined with subtle elements borrowed from the ambient and industrial genres. And it is those elements that helped me to understand why traditional music in this vein doesn't resonate with me. It's too happy. And that is, of course, by design. That music is made to be played with groups of people to lift spirits and to inspire jubilation. I, as a listener, am seldom looking for those things. So with this Nihiloxica record, those intricate percussive rhythms are there, but they do not give off positive vibes due to the subtle use of synths. These songs don't inspire jollity or happiness. They seem to be built from bitterness, anxiety, anger, frustration, and fear. Maybe I'm reading into that, but this album helped me understand my relationship with an entire genre of music by giving me something that wasn't hopeful, but instead worried. It's awesome. 7. Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia. Coming in at number 7 is my choice for Pop Album of the Year, Future Nostalgia by Dua Lipa. This record is a fun combination of disco, funk, new wave, and modern dance pop. It isn't often I get swept up by a dance record. It really does take a landmark album to accomplish this, and I think Future Nostalgia is a landmark record in the pop sphere. The grooves and melodies presented on this album are infectiously memorable and get stuck in my head for days at a time. Dua's voice also deserves to be complimented. It has a unique power to it and stands out on the radio while being concisely what this kind of pop music needs. This record is fun, and sometimes that's all a record needs to be. Number 6, Run the Jewels, Run the Jewels 4. Number 6, RTJ4. Upon first listen, I thought this album was okay. That is until I got to the track Walking Through the Snow, and then it all clicked. And I began to enjoy the hell out of this entire record, with the exception of the song Ooh La La. I know, it got a lot of play this year, fans loved it. I personally thought it was the weakest track they've done since their debut album, but that's just my opinion. Besides that one blip, this record continues LP and Killer Mike's fantastic run of albums with hard-hitting lyrics, insane beats, and strong commentary. The features are also killer. Not a lot to say about this one, honestly, it's just really good. If you've enjoyed any of the previous records, you'll enjoy this one as well. 5. Hawksley Workman, Less Rage, More Tears. Canadian singer-songwriter Hawksley Workman is back with a new record called Less Rage, More Tears. Hawksley has long been one of my favorite songwriters, able to excel at multiple genres. This past summer, I had made a list of my top 30 favorite Hawksley Workman songs, which I had to immediately amend due to the lead single from this new record, Dwindling Beauty, Let's Fake Our Deaths Together. A melancholic, somber, yet gorgeous song. I didn't get a chance to listen to this new record until a week after it had been released. I was at home, and there were tornado warnings for my area. The power had gone out, and the wind was incredibly strong. So, I grabbed some whiskey, pulled up Less Rage, More Tears on Spotify, laid on my bed with my cat, and listened to it in full. It was a surreal experience. Tornado didn't touch down near me, by the way. But this album really did take me away. It is a strong set of tracks touching on love, loss, nostalgia, heartbreak, and depression. Some well-crafted lyrics and some beautiful sounding instrumentals. Hawksley has done it again. 4. Aesop-ROC, Spirit World Field Guide. Aesop-ROC has been my favorite rapper for many years now, and has been on a strong run as of late. His previous solo record, 2016's The Impossible Kid, and the collaborative Malibu Ken's 2019 self-titled debut were, in my opinion, the two best projects of his career. He continues his lofty pedigree on this new album, Spirit World Field Guide, although I will say I do consider this record a bit of a step back in terms of quality, but there's something to note there. It's still landing at number 4 on my list. This record has some of Ace's strangest and most interesting instrumentals, and these beats are fascinating at points. His lyrical content is, as to be expected, absolutely superb. Best in the game, no question. I was a bit concerned about the runtime of this record, mostly because there are 21 tracks, and while it does drag a little, he finds a way to lessen that by including short segue tracks that are still entertaining and quite good. I find the concept of the record fresh and intriguing, and I think Aesop-ROC has, again, come through with a great project. 3. Clipping. Visions of Bodies Being Burned. Number 3 is Visions of Bodies Being Burned by Clipping. This is Clipping's second consecutive horror-themed album, and I think they continue with the greatness of the previous record that existed on Addiction to Blood, but also make some slight improvements. The vibe of this record is consistently unsettling. The aesthetic is done tremendously and tastefully, which isn't always easy when you're combining elements of horror and hip-hop. But they do find a way to pull it off convincingly. Some of the instrumentals on this record are insane, a highlight for me being the second verse of the track, Something Underneath, which features Daveed Diggs rapping over loud, percussive static. Speaking of Daveed, his rapping ability is on full display here, as usual. The cadences, the flow, the lyrics, the delivery. This guy's got it all, and this all adds up to being my favorite rap album of the year. 2. Winterfelleth. The Reckoning Dawn. As you no doubt have noticed, I wasn't really feeling extreme metal this year. I'm still not sure if that's because there was lackluster releases or if my listening habits shifted, but extreme metal just did not grab my ear this year the way it normally does, with the exception of this new Winterfelleth record. I'm a relatively new fan of this band, but I was so blown away by this record. I found it supremely captivating. It's harsh and dark and yet still really catchy, as I found the melodies sticking with me for quite some time after listening. This brand of folk-infused metal can be really hit or miss for me, and this hit the mark exactly. An album that never grew old and stayed fresh every time I spun it. A tremendous soundscape that is so easy and fun to get lost in. Number 1. Debbie Wiseman and Stephen Fry, The Mythos Suite. My number 1 album of the year is The Mythos Suite by Debbie Wiseman with the National Symphony Orchestra and Stephen Fry. In 2017, author, actor, comedian, all-around wonderful person Stephen Fry published a book called Mythos, a series of ancient Greek myths retold in Fry's charming and powerful manner. Debbie Wiseman, a British composer with over 2 decades of experience, connected with Stephen and suggested a collaborative effort of a musical accompaniment piece to Fry's book. So what we have is Stephen Fry reading ancient Greek myths atop Wiseman's superb orchestral score, and it is phenomenal. Fry has often lent his voice to other works. I think he might be most famous to people for reading the audio versions of the Harry Potter novels. His delivery of these mythos pieces is absolutely sublime. His voice has strength and gravitas when it needs to be more commanding and boisterous, but he can also slip into a lovely lilting voice full of sweetness and charm. He really brings these stories to life. And underneath it all, there's Debbie's score, and it is the music that pushes this album into incredible territory. Much like Stephen's voice, Wiseman's able to perfectly suit her music to whatever the emotional state of the story happens to be. These pieces move from ominous, brooding, and portentous all the way to beautiful, ethereal, and whimsical, and everything in between. The tracklist is set up alternatingly so that the odd-numbered tracks are the stories featuring Fry's narration, while every other following track is a truncated version of the musical piece without any narration. I just adore this record, and it was my favorite listen this past year by far. And that concludes my top 10 list for albums of 2020. What did you think of these records if you happen to listen to them? What albums made your year-end list? And thanks for listening. This has been Strange Radio's Stranger. Adios.